It's August, and that means two things. One, we still have a few really hot weeks of summer left to look forward to, and two, the Phantom Pain is almost here. It's been a long wait, but on September 1st, we'll finally get our hands on the next, and probably last, Metal Gear Solid game. I'm so excited.
Yeah, with all the psychic stuff going on, it's going to be surreal.
What do you mean psychic stuff?
Oh, you know, the whole fever dream of the intro. I'm pretty sure I've even seen Psycho Mantis. Remember him, the mind reader?
That's, no, you can't mind read, that's not a thing.
He totally does. Don't you remember Metal Gear Solid?
No, we're not getting into this. It's fine. I'm sure he doesn't even play a big role in the game. Anyways, in celebration of all this Metal Gear fever, I wanted to go back and play some of the games I missed in this series. And on that list is the game that started it all, Metal Gear. Terminator cover and all. I originally avoided it as I heard it was clunky and convoluted, but seeing as we're about to get a game about Big Boss's transformation into a villain, I should learn about where he ultimately ends up. And there's something curious about the first game that I always wanted to see for myself. See, for most people in the West, this is what we know as Metal Gear. You start in the jungle, you punch some dogs, you get shaken up in a van, the works.
But for anyone who didn't know, this isn't actually the first Metal Gear, it's a port. Hideo Kojima didn't even work on this game. The first Metal Gear was created for the MSX computer, which was a Microsoft system made in 1982. We already had the Commodore 64 in the West, so it didn't really sell well here, but it was very popular in Japan. The Metal Gear on the NES was the result of a port commissioned by Konami behind Kojima's back. So technically, as far as the Metal Gear universe goes, its events aren't necessarily canon.
Well, from what I've heard, while the games are about the same, there are some stark differences between the different versions. But I thought the best way to find out about these was to play both back to back. So let's dive right in. We're going to start with the NES version and then contrast that with the MSX version to see not only what's different, but how well it's aged. As such, this won't be as science heavy as other episodes, but I think that's okay. So, the story of Metal Gear on the NES is about Solid Snake, a rookie operative for the Special Forces team Foxhound. You infiltrate enemy territory to rescue prisoners, specifically your own comrade Gray Fox, and destroy the mecha tank Metal Gear. Running your operation is Big Boss.
The very same Big Boss we'll be playing as in Phantom Pain. This game actually takes place in '95, about 11 years after Phantom Pain.
The game starts you off parachuting out of a helicopter with 3 other team members. Who are they? No one knows. When you land, you're alone, and they're never referenced again. I like to think they got stuck in some trees, and Snake just continued on like nothing happened. The game focuses on stealth combat. Times arise where you must take the enemy by force, but most of the time if you stay out of the enemy's line of sight, you can slip by without conflict. For an NES game, there's a lot of depth here. There are 5 buildings in total connected through jungle sections and a desert. The buildings usually have multiple floors to go through. You have to search the rooms to free the prisoners and gather information, but to open the doors you need the right key cards. There are a wealth of weapons and items for you to find to help you progress along the way. So the game essentially boils down to sneaking past guards, searching rooms, getting items, and freeing prisoners. Besides getting vague information and generally being a nice thing to do, saving prisoners count towards your total score that eventually increases your class rank, which increases your health and ammo limits, which is actually required to finish the game, so you have to do it. For how the actual game plays, when a guard sees you, the screen goes into an alert mode. All the guards on the screen are alerted to your presence and begin their attack. You can either kill all the enemies on the screen or just leave. The alert doesn't carry over from screen to screen. In fact, every time you change screens, replenishable items like ammo or rations come back, and any enemies you killed return to their original positions. Also in your way are security cameras, which you sneak past by hugging the walls, hidden doors you punch open, and these jetpack guys who don't jetpack, and a bunch of bosses.
Oh, do you fight a team of extraordinary soldiers like Metal Gear Solid Sniper Wolf or Psycho Mantis? Is there some super cool mind reading?
No mind reading. There's no mind reading anywhere in this game, okay? Alright. The bosses you face are, and try not to be overwhelmed by their awesomeness here, Shotgunner, Machine Gun Kid, Twin Shot, Tank, Bulldozer, Fire Trooper, the Arnolds, Coward Duck, Computer, and the Final Leader.
Wow.
Yep. You fight Shotgunner directly after finding and freeing Gray Fox. The Twin Shots are 2 artillery people on the roof. The Arnolds are 2 cyborgs guarding doors, again with the Terminator. Coward Duck is a dick who hides behind hostages and throws boomerangs at you. And the Computer is the main controller of Metal Gear.
Wait, so what about Metal Gear?
You never actually see Metal Gear. You blow up the computer instead. Kind of a letdown, right? And directly after the fight, Big Boss! That's right, your commander of Foxhound turns out to be the leader of Outer Heaven this whole time. You're sent in to feed in false information back to the team and buy Big Boss time to finish Metal Gear, but you get farther than you were supposed to. The last fight is with Big Boss and a self-destruct time limit going on. Afterwards, you get in the elevator and hightail it out of there. You hightail, high... We're going up pretty high. Oh shit, I'm in the wrong... Hightail it out of there. And that pretty much sums up the game. The controls are still clunky, the objectives convoluted, and the translation poor. but I still had a good time with it. It's cool how complicated and thought out the game is. Oftentimes progressing means backtracking to visit areas with new key cards, and it really gives you the feeling that you're infiltrating an enemy base. Pretty impressive. So how does this stack up to the original version? Well, to be honest, with all the differences I heard about, I was expecting the NES port to loosely follow the progression of the original, getting the same idea across, but still being a different game. But they're actually surprisingly similar. Even a lot of the map layouts are the same.
Supposedly, Konami gave the small team just 3 months to port the game to the NES. They faced a lot of hardware limitations and were asked by corporate to intentionally make the game different than the one on MSX. So they did with what they could.
But still, let's dive deeper and see exactly what's different.
So from the get-go, the game starts with Snake infiltrating underwater, not dropping by parachute. In fact, there's no jungle at all.
The other difference you'll notice here is the alert system. While it's true you can still go off screen to turn off the alert system like in the NES, there's a second high alert mode that persists. It's like they can tell where you are, even without cameras. Like they're reading your... never mind. The only way to shut this off is to kill all the enemies on the screen. Actually, while parts of the map are shared with the NES game, the layout is kinda different. In this game there are 3 buildings, not 5. There are 2 outside sections connecting the 2 buildings, all in the desert. There's no jungles at all. Where did they get the jungles from? I have no idea. But all 5 buildings' contents are still here, they're just combined into the 3. Or they were split up into 5, I guess. Building 4 where you find Grey Fox is in the basement of Building 1, and Building 5 where you find Dr. Petrovic, the floor with all the gas, is now the basement of Building 2.
There are a few other things that can throw NES veterans off guard. You can't sneak past the cameras by hugging the wall, they spot you anyways.
Also in the MSX version you get to parachute down into the courtyard, which really sucks that the NES removed that because that's pretty awesome. Speaking of the roof, there were a few boss changes.
Does Psycho Mantis make his mind-reading debut?
Okay, you know what? Let's do this. We're doing this. Mind reading isn't possible. I don't care how many nanomachines you throw at me, nothing is going to make me believe that this is a possibility. I can accept a lot of video game logic, not this. Let's just look at this from a neurological perspective, okay? Take a generalized area chunk level of analysis for your brain, where you had defined sections for vision, spatial information, auditory information, motor control, etc. Even at this level, the code and the processes underlying what goes on in people's minds is pretty complicated. Now, the brain isn't just chunks of well-defined areas, it's a whole wrap of cells, of neurons, all intermingling with each other. There are 100 billion neurons in the brain. That's 1,000 millions of neurons. And to make matters worse, it's not the neurons themselves that are important or unique, but the connections to other neurons and the overall pattern of activation. Any given neuron can have hundreds of inputs. Any given neuron can have hundreds of outputs. And, if it wasn't bad enough, these networks are dynamic. They change over time. The strength between connections are constantly increased, decreased, pruned out, established. I'm not talking about growing kids here either. Throughout your entire adult life, your neural network is constantly adapting. To illustrate just how powerful this is, take Big Boss when he loses his eye in Snake Eater. There will be a large downstream effect of neurons that just aren't getting any signal anymore from that eye. All those networks would be rendered useless. But, instead, they're incorporated into neighboring processes where they can actually be useful again. The brain is incredibly resilient and highly efficient.
This also goes to show that every brain is very different, like a fingerprint. For example, violinists actually have more brain mass dedicated to controlling their fingers. You can actually see that in brain imaging. Similarly, Snake clearly needs less brain mass for his missing eye, since it's not doing anything there, so that would be reflected too. So, if you followed a pattern in one person's brain, it wouldn't necessarily match what that thought would look like in another person's brain. It's like rolling a teeny tiny marble down the track of one person's fingerprint and trying that same pattern on someone else's finger. That's going to be one bumpy ride.
So when people start talking about mind reading either through technology or even supernatural means, I can't be excited or in awe of the idea because to me, it's just so hopeless. It's so far out of our grasp that thinking about it is laughable. I mean, there have definitely been some exciting research in recent years, but nothing groundbreaking, nothing that makes me think that this is something that can happen, you know? So, that's it. Screw you, Psycho Mantis. Screw you. Alright, that was a bit of a rant. Let me rewind a bit and get back into Metal Gear. Okay, so where were we? Right, the bosses. Okay, the bosses in the original game, in the MSX version, while largely the same, are all a bit smarter and more capable. On the roof, the twin shots are no more, and instead, you fight a Hindy helicopter. Yeah.
Why wasn't this in the NES? It's so much cooler.
Right? Also, remember those weird jetpack looking guys from the roof that weren't actually different than regular soldiers in the NES version? Yeah, in this game they fly around. It's super cool until you realize they're super annoying. Finally, the biggest difference in this game. You know how before you didn't actually fight Metal Gear in Metal Gear? You just blew up a computer? Yeah, Metal Gear's in this game, and it looks pretty awesome. You get to see this tank in action. It actually just sits there and lets you blow it up while its security shoots at you. You have to use plastic explosives, but you gotta do it in a specific order that Dr. Petrovic, one of the people you rescue, teaches you. You need 16 explosives in total, but he forgets where to put the last one. Thanks. And after that, you fight Big Boss and hightail it out of there. Again. And that's it. That's the original Metal Gear. The story is still the same deal, so if you only played the NES one, you weren't misled very much. Except for those original 3 guys in the chopper. They're all a lie.
Overall, this game looks way more fun. You can tell that they were struggling to convey all the ideas that Kojima had in the original game with the NES version.
If you're thinking about going back to play Metal Gear, I'd say play the MSX version rather than the NES. A lot of Kojima's ideas didn't translate into the NES, making for a watered down experience. But this is definitely the definitive way to play Metal Gear.